As we speak, NATO is fortifying its Eastern European members with troops, fighter jets, and naval ships.
Ukraine is on the edge. The United States is evacuating its embassy at Kiev. The UK has asked its diplomats to leave Ukraine.
Meanwhile, economic aid and lethal aid in the form of anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles has arrived in Ukraine for the country to defend itself from more than 10,000 Russian troops waiting at its border ready to invade. Everyone is gearing up for a war in Eastern Europe, and war is a bad idea, always. It leads to avoidable death, destruction and collapse of economy. Everyone across the international relations community agrees that a war with Ukraine is a bad idea for Russia. Yes, Russia can easily invade Ukraine, but it is obvious that Ukraine won't give in without a fight. Ukrainians are training themselves for a war with Russia with NATO weapons, and in such a scenario, mass Russian casualties is a fact. But what is more lethal than weapons in this case are the harsh sanctions that would follow, along with the many Western-backed uprisings in Ukraine against Russia. In the words of Vyon's Palki Sharma Upadhyay,
invading is one thing, controlling is another. Let's assume Putin marches into Kiev. Let's assume that he installs a puppet regime. What happens next? He's controlling a country that despises Russian control.
So the question now is, why is Russia doing what it is doing despite knowing very well that invasion of Ukraine is a bad idea? We don't know. Stick till the end of the video, I've got a theory for this. Meanwhile, one explanation as to why Russia is doing this is because Russia considers Ukraine as its own territory. In 2014, Russia even snatched the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, and it might be that Russia now wants whole of Ukraine. But this is a very unsatisfactory answer considering the high cost of doing so. Russia has also presented a list of demands to the US and NATO separately that gives us insight into what Russia wants. But frankly, those demands are pretty unrealistic. For example, Russia wants NATO not to take any new members, especially Ukraine and former USSR states. Accepting this is impossible, as it would require the consensus of all of NATO's 30 members to change its open door policy. Similarly, Russia demands NATO to ban all its military activity in its Eastern European member states. But doing this would defeat the whole purpose of NATO, that is to offer protection to its member states. As expected, NATO has rejected all of these demands. Okay, so we clearly do not know why is Russia at Ukraine's doorstep. But what are the reasons that made Putin think that invading Ukraine might be a good idea? Two things: Nord Stream 2 and weak Western leadership. Nord Stream 2 is a 9.5 billion euro undersea gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. Through Nord Stream 2, Germany expects to double its gas imports from Russia, and in return, Russia expects Germany to cut her some slack in Ukraine. On top of that, the European Union is highly dependent on Russia for its gas imports. So it is not in the interest of European countries to sanction Russia, unless they want their people to freeze to death. To counter this, USA along with its allies in the Middle East have increased their gas production for the EU, but this arrangement is also unsustainable. Weak leadership and disunity among powerful Western countries might have also been part of Putin's calculation before putting pressure on NATO. American President Joe Biden's approval ratings have been at its lowest.
Let's go, Brandon.
Domestic pressure is high on British Prime Minister Boris Johnson for his lockdown parties.
He is wrong in what he said he said what he is wrong in.
And new German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is struggling with his coalition government. The disunity among NATO members is also evident, with Germany unwilling to send weapons to Ukraine and preventing Estonia for doing the same. And I'm sure by now you already know why Germany is behaving this way. From public statements of Western leaders, it may seem that all of NATO members don't want Russia to invade. But this is not quite the case. Remember I just mentioned that Western leadership is struggling domestically? Guess what can make Biden's Afghanistan blunder forgotten, Boris's party problems disappear, and Europe's COVID mismanagement vanish? Here's the thing, unlike popular perception that strong leaders are warmongers, the probability of an external conflict increases if the leadership is in crisis or weak. So deep down, some NATO members want Russia to invade, and some don't. Okay, let's zoom out and take a look at how invasion of Ukraine affects global politics. It is obvious that if Russia invades Ukraine, its prominence will grow in Europe. but its power will eventually go down because of harsh economic sanctions. Still, Russia will survive by trading with China and other Asian countries. The European Union, on the other hand, will have to compromise between its security needs and energy needs, which is always a bad idea. In the long run, however, the EU will be forced to take care of its own security, considering US is not as powerful as it used to be. The leaders of United Kingdom and United States can use this invasion as a diversion from domestic politics, but they will have to divert more resources to the European Union, its biggest trading partner. And as I've already said earlier, this is an unsustainable proposition. And the biggest winner in this geopolitical poker is
China, 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 China. You take China.
China.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, USA and other Western countries have been focusing on the Indo-Pacific region to counter China. Security pacts like AUKUS and Quad aim to keep China in check. And China even considers these pacts as Asian NATOs. China is the new USSR. But it is not quite there yet. In such scenario, it is beneficial for China that US shifts away its attention from East Asia to Eastern Europe, as it was during Cold War. Now let's come back to the question in the beginning of the video we didn't have answer to. Why is Putin doing all of this? What is Russia's endgame here? After analyzing everything that has been happening so far, it seems that by threatening Ukraine and by extension the European Union, Putin wants the EU to fire up its old military complex to defend itself from Russia, but without American help. As America's influence is declining, it is in the interest of Putin for European Union to be independent and trade with Russia according to its own needs and wants, and not how the US wants them to do. This will give the Russian economy the revival it desperately needs. A couple of days back, Germany's chief of naval staff lost his job while he was in New Delhi for saying that Putin just wants respect from Europe.
But what he really wants is respect. He wants, on eye level, he wants respect. And my God, giving someone respect is low cost, even no cost.
I argue the contrary. Putin actually wants Europe to respect itself and come out of the American shadow. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming over to my vlog. I will see you soon.